Today we're going to go through using a metronome so that it can help with your rhythm and practicing, but so that it can also be a positive experience. Hello everyone, I'm Christy-lyn and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if this is the first time that you're here, then an extra special welcome to you, and I suggest you subscribe if you're learning to play the harp and you want some help along the way. This is the place to be. So today we're talking about the metronome. You might have heard that practicing with the metronome is a good idea or it can be really helpful, but you may also have heard that it can be super frustrating, and maybe you've even had some really negative experiences with it yourself, with the harp or with other instruments. But I like to think of the metronome as a really helpful tool for your practice, and I think of it as not an enemy, but as a friend. I think if you make friends with your metronome, it can be an amazing sounding board that really helps you to know about your rhythm and to really improve that. So today we're going to look at why it's important, and then also I'm going to take you step by step through using it in a positive way. So why is the metronome so helpful and important? Well, I think it's really helpful to help you get fluency and to not stop and start, especially when the piece gets difficult or there's harder parts of the piece. We're not always that objective. We kind of don't notice that we're slowing down in the hard parts, and that can really take away from the expression of the piece and painting the picture that you want to paint with this beautiful story you're creating with your piece. We don't want the slowing down and speeding up to be dictated by just how hard the piece is and not even realizing that. So the metronome can really give you that feedback and give you the objective view. And then it also really helps to train your sense of rhythm. Not all of us are born with an innate sense of rhythm and knowing exactly when the beat is coming. So you can use the metronome to train that so that you can start to hear that regular beat in every measure. The metronome can help you learn that. And then the last thing is it can really help you with disciplined practice. So it can help you do little chunks and to do it in loops and really keep you regular. And I think it's an amazing helpful tool. What metronome should you be using? Well, back in the day when I was learning the piano, I used one of those old school metronomes, which I'm sure some of you have seen. It's like shaped like a triangle and it has this ticking thing. Maybe I'll try and put a photo on the screen now, and you can totally use that if you have one. It can be really quite fun to have that arm that's swinging. But I like using a metronome app these days. The reason is because you can choose a tone that is not annoying for you. Some of us, one of the frustrating things about the metronome can be that you just don't like the sound of that tick, and it's just like it grates on your nerves. But with a metronome app, especially some of the ones you have today, even free ones, you can choose a sound that sounds less annoying to you and maybe even sounds good. You can find ones that have a drum beat. It can really even sound like you're playing with a band. So the one I like to use is called Pro Metronome. I'm going to put a screenshot of what it looks like on the App Store. So it's free on both Apple and Android devices. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just like to use this app because it has a lot of different sounds to choose from, but it's also pretty simple to use and quite straightforward and easy to figure out. And then I'll also show you a screenshot now of what it looks like when you're actually in the app, and then I'm going to take you through using it in just a moment. When you're first getting used to using a metronome, I suggest that you choose a piece that's really simple and easy for you, and something that you're familiar with, so that the metronome is not kind of rapping you on the knuckles for a piece that you're already struggling with, but that you're making friends with your metronome with an easy piece that's, oops, I turned it on, an easy piece that's already fun and simple for you to play. And then another thing I suggest is, so with this app you can choose how many beats in a measure. So I'm going to change that from 4 beats in a measure to 1 beat in a measure, because then you don't have to have a different tone. So if I had 4 beats in a measure, it sounds like this. So it has the high beat, tick, tick, tick. I'm going to rather change it to 1 beat in a measure so that it's the same for every tick. Now the positive of that is if I make a mistake and I have to stop for a moment, then I don't have to wait for that high tick to be on the first beat of the measure. I can just join in with the metronome at any point, and that makes it less stressful. Okay, so that's what we do first, and then you're going to choose a simple part of your piece, and we're going to make a loop. And that's also going to make it much easier to play together with your metronome, so that you don't have to follow through the entire piece and make a mistake and feel like you're getting off track. We're going to choose just 1 or maybe 2 measures and play that in a loop so that you can get used to playing with your metronome. Okay, now to choose the speed. So I'm going to choose a speed that's really slow and easy so that it's not a stressful experience to try out playing with the metronome. So at the moment, this is 60 beats per measure. You can see that in the top left corner there. And I'm going to just turn this dial here this way so that it goes down to 40 beats per measure. That's going to be much slower and easier. And I'm using my piece Behind the Flames, and I'm just going to use the simplest part of the piece and make a little loop out of it. The link to the sheet music is up in the cards if you're interested. So Behind the Flames, this part goes, let me just get my right position. Okay, so I'm going to do it really slowly with the metronome. I'm going to turn the metronome on. And I've just got to get into the beat and imagine the sound of the melody. So it'll be da, 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 dun, 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 dun. So I'm kind of counting and trying to figure out how it fits. And I want to try and stay on the beat. And I'm just looping through one measure. So I can get used to the feeling of what playing with the metronome feels like. And if I make a mistake, then I can just stop and start again. Join in with the metronome anytime. So let me show you what that will be like. Oh man. Okay, just wait. Stay calm. And join in. And I keep on looping. Oops, I didn't come in on time, so then I just stay calm, breathe for a moment, get into the beat, and try again. So that's a good process for getting used to your metronome at first. One thing to be aware of is if you start to have toxic thoughts. So we've spoken about that in a previous video, which I'll put up there. And that's when you have really negative thoughts and you tell yourself some nasty things like, oh, I'll never get this, or I hate the metronome, I've never been good at this, or I have terrible rhythm. If you notice yourself starting to say those things, we really need to deal with it, because otherwise what happens is it actually breaks down the part of your brain that's just been learning the exact thing that you've been doing. So it causes these toxic chemicals and destroys the learning. So if you notice that you're doing that, apply the principles from in that video. Choose some positive things to say. I can do this. The metronome is my friend. We're working on this together. This is a helpful tool. I have all the time in the world. You know, just say some positive things to yourself and try again, because a lot of this working with the metronome is actually not as much about ability, but more to do with a mind game, because we get impatient, we try to move ahead, and then we tell ourselves that we're terrible and we can never get it right. So we want to make this a positive experience and just keep on trying, and there's no pressure. Now I'm going to show you what it's like to use the metronome to improve a difficult part of your piece. So let's say I'm using the metronome at the performance speed for this piece. So in this piece it's 120 beats, and I'm going to play through it, and if I find a part that's difficult for me where I keep on making a mistake, I'm going to stop and focus on that part using the metronome. So let me show you what that's like. That's the hard part of the piece, this part where it goes on the offbeat. So because I wrote the piece, it's not hard for me, but we're going to choose that part to focus on and really get it right, so that whenever you play, you don't hesitate on that hard part. So I'm going to start with this, and you see what speed is easy for me to do. So that's a speed that I can start with, and I think of that in my head because I've got to now find that speed on the metronome. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, So there's a tapping tool in the corner there, and I just tap at the speed that I can play it, and that's the speed I want to practice at. And then it picks up the speed and it tells me it's 68 beats per measure, per minute. Okay, so then I start with that speed. And I loop it. And you keep on looping. I would suggest choosing a short section, maybe 1 or 2. In this case I was doing 4 measures, and you loop it over and over so that you can spend extra focus on that difficult part of the piece. And then when you're comfortable at that slower speed, then you move it up a bit. So I could move it up a few beats. It's now on 70. And I could try it at 70 and do that at a loop. And when I'm comfortable with that, I move it up a little bit more until eventually you've got it at the speed where the rest of the piece wants to be. And then you can use the metronome to play it through at the higher speed again. So this is a really helpful way of using the metronome as a practice tool to improve the parts of the piece that are always a little slower than the rest. And also you can use the metronome to build up the speed of the entire piece. So you can choose a slow speed that's comfortable for you in the whole piece, and you know that you want it to ultimately be much faster. And you can do this method with the whole piece, starting slowly and then building up the speed bit by bit by bit as you get comfortable. But I would suggest when you're first working with the metronome that you don't use it for the entire piece, because that's a good way to feel frustrated and like you're failing. Whereas when you use it in just like a 2-measure phrase, then it's a lot easier to join in again, make a loop, and feel a sense of achievement and really get into using the metronome without having to read the sheet music and look at all the different things that are happening in the piece. It's just too many moving parts and it can be really overwhelming. So when you're first making friends with your metronome, stick to shorter bits. Now I'm going to tell you about using different drum beats. This is the fun part. So if you didn't like the beat that I was using and it sounded really annoying to you, then no problem. There's lots more to choose from. So I'm going to show you the different sounds that you can use on this app. So I've changed it in this part up here with the pink so that we have different sounds on the first 3 beats, and then the last beat is going to be the same as the third one. And this is just so that I can show you what it sounds like with the different tones. So let's hear what I had. So not great, but I don't mind using that. But let's see what else there is. Okay, that's number 3. Oh, that's so bad. Kind of more electronic. Whoa, way more electronic. Oh, it's like a baby robot. Okay, that's pretty nice. It's kind of like a wood block. It's a bit soft. Let me turn it up. Okay. Whoa, like a really loud wood block. Okay. And this one, another wood block type sound. See, that's a fun one. It's like you're playing with a band. It's like a drum beat. That can really make it fun.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There we go.
2, 3, 4.
That's pretty useful if you ask me. Well, I hope that was helpful for you, learning to make friends with your metronome and have a positive experience with it. Well, I'd love to hear from you whether this was helpful, or if you have other questions about the metronome. Have you had positive or negative experiences with your metronome? Have you made friends? So put that down in the comments and let's keep the discussion going. Otherwise, I'll see you again next time. Bye!